My name is Andrew, and I'm 34 years old. I've been married to my wife, Emily, for 5 years now, and I'd like to think we've had a strong, solid relationship. We've both always been very close with my family, especially my younger brother, Jack, who's 30. Growing up, Jack and I were typical brothers, close at times, competitive at others, but we always had each other's backs. Emily, my wife, got along fine with my family too. There was nothing major that stood out. At least I didn't think so. Everything seemed normal until the moment I received the wedding invitation for Jack's big day. Jack had recently gotten engaged to his fiancée, Lily. Of course, I was thrilled for them. I could already picture the celebrations, the family gathering, the joy. It was a big event, and I couldn't wait to be a part of it. But when the invitation arrived, my excitement turned to confusion. I opened the envelope eagerly, expecting to see both my name and Emily's. But as I unfolded the elegant wedding invitation with the gold-trimmed edges, I was taken aback. It was addressed only to me. My name. No mention of Emily. At first, I thought it was some mistake. Maybe it was just a typo or an oversight, but no. I double-checked everything. There was no mention of her at all. I stared at the card in my hand, still not quite able to process what I was seeing. I thought maybe it was just an error with the guest list, right? I didn't say anything to Emily immediately. I didn't want to upset her if it really was just some mix-up. But as the days went on, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I kept telling myself it was nothing, but every time I looked at that invitation, it nagged at me. The next day, I decided to call my mom. She and I are close, and I thought she might know what was going on. Maybe there was something behind it that I didn't understand. So, I dialed her number, and when she answered, I went straight to the point. Mom, I got the wedding invitation for Jack's wedding, but there's no mention of Emily. Is this a mistake? There was a pause on the other end of the line, just long enough to make me nervous. I could tell something was wrong from her tone. She hesitated before giving me a half-hearted answer. Well, Jack and Lily are keeping the guest list small. Maybe they just didn't have room for plus ones. It didn't sit right with me, the way she said it. It felt too casual, like she was trying to brush it off. But I didn't push her any further. I told myself maybe I was overthinking things. I didn't want to cause a scene, so I decided to let it go for the time being. But later, when I told Emily about the invite, her reaction confirmed everything I had been afraid of. Emily, who is always family-oriented, was clearly hurt. I could see the disappointment in her eyes as I told her the truth about the invitation. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She didn't say anything at first, but I could tell she was trying to hold back her feelings. She'd always been supportive of my family, attending every gathering, every birthday, and every holiday. She'd made an effort to build relationships, even when my family wasn't always easy to deal with. For her to be excluded from something like this, without even an explanation, felt personal. And it crushed her. I don't get it, she finally said. What did I do? I didn't have an answer. I told her that I'd figure it out. I wasn't going to let it slide without understanding why, but I didn't know where to start. The situation felt strange. It felt wrong, but I still didn't want to assume the worst. So I decided to give Jack the benefit of the doubt. I texted him casually, trying to keep it light, asking if the invitation was just for me, or if Emily had been left out for some reason. I was expecting a quick response, something like, "Oh, sorry, it's just a mistake," or "We ran out of space." But no. I didn't hear back from him at all. A day passed, then two, no word, not even a "sorry I'm busy" message. I couldn't ignore the feeling that something deeper was going on. Then came the family barbecue, the one event I was sure would give me some clarity. I thought I'd see Jack there and could ask him directly, or at least hear someone mention the wedding and get a better sense of what was going on. But as I was talking to a cousin, I overheard something that made my stomach drop. My cousin was talking about the wedding, and when he mentioned the guest list, I overheard him say, "Everyone's invited, except Emily." I froze. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't some mix-up with the guest list. They had deliberately left Emily out. The truth hit me like a freight train. I didn't know why, but I knew I needed answers. The lies, the secrecy, there was no way I could ignore this anymore. That night, I pulled my parents aside. I asked them point blank, "Why isn't Emily invited to the wedding?" My dad tried to downplay it, brushing it off like it was no big deal. But my mom, she wouldn't make eye contact. She kept repeating things like, It's just one day, and we don't want any drama before the wedding. And that's when I knew there was more to this than I was being told. After the conversation with my parents at the barbecue, everything felt like it was falling apart. Emily understandably felt hurt, and I could see the sadness in her eyes every time she thought about the wedding. I had promised her that I'd get to the bottom of it, but the more I tried to find answers, the more everything seemed to spiral. That night, after I spoke to my parents, I felt this overwhelming sense of frustration. I knew there was something they weren't telling me. I tried to reassure Emily, telling her that it was just some mix-up, that it wasn't personal, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. Something bigger was going on. I spent the next few days replaying the events in my head, going over every conversation, every interaction. I couldn't get rid of the feeling that I was missing something, that there was more to this than just a wedding guest list. So I did what I felt was the only option left. I decided to confront Jack directly. I knew this was going to be uncomfortable, but I couldn't let it slide any longer. I texted him that evening, asking if we could meet up. I told him it was important, that I needed to talk to him about the wedding and Emily's exclusion. Jack didn't reply immediately, which only made the knot in my stomach tighten. I had expected him to respond, even if it was just a brief message saying we could talk. But the silence lingered, adding fuel to the fire of suspicion. After a few hours, Jack finally responded. He agreed to meet up later in the week, saying we could chat over drinks. He added that Lily would be coming too. At first, I thought that was fine. If anything, I wanted to hear her side of things. I had no idea what to expect, but I knew this conversation would change everything. When the day came, I told Emily about the meeting, and she gave me a hesitant smile. She was relieved that I was finally addressing it, but I could see the anxiety in her eyes. She didn't want to go, and I didn't blame her. I could tell how much this was eating at her. I reassured her, though, that I was going to stand up for her no matter what. I would fight for her to be treated with respect. When I got to the restaurant, Jack and Lily were already sitting at a table in the corner. The atmosphere felt tense from the moment I walked in. Jack was sitting stiffly, his hands fidgeting in his lap, and Lily, well, she didn't even look at me. Her arms were crossed over her chest, her expression cold. I didn't waste any time. I got straight to the point. Jack, Lily, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I need to know why Emily wasn't invited to the wedding. This doesn't feel right, and I've been trying to figure out what happened. I deserve to know the truth. Lily shifted uncomfortably in her seat, but it was she who spoke first. It's simple, she said bluntly, her voice sharp. I don't feel comfortable having Emily at the wedding. She's made comments about our relationship in the past, and I don't want any negativity on our big day. I was stunned. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Emily, my wife, had never said anything remotely negative about their relationship. I couldn't recall a single time she had made a comment like that. What comments? I asked, trying to piece it all together. When did this happen? Lily's eyes narrowed as she recounted a family gathering from last year. She mentioned a specific moment at a barbecue, and I racked my brain trying to remember the details. The more I thought about it, the more I was convinced there had to be some mistake. But Lily insisted, saying Emily had implied that she wasn't good enough for Jack. This didn't sound like Emily at all. It felt like Lily was exaggerating or misinterpreting something. I glanced at Jack, hoping for some clarification, but he was silent, his eyes fixed on the table. His inaction spoke volumes, and that's when I realized he was siding with Lily. Jack, do you agree with this? I asked, my voice betraying my frustration. Is this how you feel? Jack shifted uncomfortably, but after a long pause, he spoke. I mean, I don't entirely agree with Lily, he said, but it's her day, and I have to support her. He sounded apologetic, but his words were like a knife in my chest. I had never imagined my brother, the person I had grown up with, the person I thought I could count on, would side with Lily over me and Emily. This wasn't just about a wedding anymore. This was about respect, about family loyalty, and my brother was making it clear that he didn't value either. I tried to explain that it was likely a misunderstanding, but Lily wasn't having it. She kept insisting that Emily's comments were too much of a risk, that she didn't want any drama on her special day. My chest tightened, and I could feel my anger rising. I was about to respond when Lily dropped another bombshell. Some of the other family members agree with me, she said, her voice calm. That's why no one is making a big deal out of Emily not being invited. It's just easier this way. I was floored. I thought this was just an issue between Lily and Emily, but now it seemed like more of my family was involved. This was bigger than I ever imagined, and the betrayal cut deep. I felt like I didn't know my family anymore. At that point, I had nothing left to say. I knew I couldn't change their minds. And the realization that they were all willing to exclude Emily for no valid reason made me sick. I paid for my drink and left, not knowing where to go or what to do next. I couldn't even look at Jack or Lily without feeling disgusted. How could they be so blind to what they were doing? How could they hurt Emily like this, especially knowing how much she had always tried to fit in and be a part of this family? When I got home, I sat Emily down and told her everything. She listened quietly, her face pale, and when I finished, she just looked at me with a mixture of hurt and disbelief. "I didn't say anything wrong," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "I never meant to offend anyone." And I believed her. Of course I did. But now it wasn't just about the wedding. It was about my entire family. They had hurt her, and they had hurt me by not standing up for her. I couldn't let this go. Not anymore. I don't know what I was expecting when I left that meeting with Jack and Lily, but it wasn't the crushing weight of betrayal that I felt in my chest. As I drove home, I could barely focus on the road, my mind spinning. The words they had said to me kept replaying in my head, like a bad soundtrack that I couldn't turn off. I was stunned by the audacity of it all. Lily, so blunt and unapologetic, and Jack, silent and complicit. I had spent my whole life believing that family meant loyalty, that we had each other's backs no matter what. But the truth hit me harder than I anticipated. My brother, the one I thought would understand, had chosen his fiancée over me, over my wife, Emily. It was a betrayal that I hadn't seen coming, and it felt like the rug had been pulled out from under me. When I walked in the door, Emily was sitting on the couch, waiting for me. Her face was a mixture of hope and fear. She knew I was going to tell her what happened, but I could tell she was still hoping that maybe, just maybe, things would be different than what I had prepared her for. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I had to say. "I spoke to Jack and Lily," I said, sitting down beside her. "And I know what's going on." Her eyes filled with anticipation. "What did they say?" They said you made comments at a family barbecue last year. Something about their relationship. Something that offended Lily." I could see the confusion in her face. "I didn't say anything like that," she replied, her voice quiet but firm. "I swear, I know," I said, taking her hand. "I told them that, but they're convinced it was a problem. They say you implied that Lily wasn't good enough for Jack?" "I never said that." Her voice cracked as she spoke, and I could feel her heart breaking, the same way mine was. "I never meant to hurt anyone. Why would they say that about me?" I didn't have an answer, at least not one that would make sense to her, or either of us. The more I thought about it, the more absurd it seemed. Emily, my loving wife, who had always supported and respected my family, was suddenly being painted as the villain for no reason. A misunderstanding, or worse, a manipulation. Of that, I was sure. "And what did they say?" Emily asked after a long silence, her voice shaking with frustration. I took another deep breath. Lily said she didn't want any negativity at the wedding, that she didn't want any drama. And Jack, he sided with her. He said he had to support her, especially on their wedding day. Emily looked at me in disbelief. He actually said that? He picked her over me? Over us? I could feel the heat rising in my chest, the anger that I had tried to hold back all evening. "Yeah, he did." Emily stood up, walking toward the kitchen, her back to me. I could see her fists clenched at her sides, her shoulders rigid. She was holding it together, but just barely. I followed her, not sure what to say. The reality of the situation was starting to settle in, and it wasn't a reality I wanted to accept. "So, what now?" she asked, her voice low. "Do we just let them do this to us? Let them treat me like I don't matter?" I could see the pain in her eyes, and it was breaking me. I had to be strong for her. I had to protect her. "No," I said firmly. "We're not letting them do this to us. We're not letting them treat you like this." But even as I said those words, I knew things weren't going to be easy. The family I had grown up with, the people I thought I knew, were proving to be something entirely different. Jack, my brother, had chosen to stand with Lily. And my parents? They had done nothing to stop this. They had enabled it. I couldn't let that go. Not anymore. Later that evening, when the shock had started to wear off, I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just let this go. This wasn't just about the wedding anymore. It was about the principle, about respect. Emily had been treated like an outsider, like she didn't belong, and I wasn't going to let that slide. I made up my mind that I needed to reach out to Jack one more time. This had gone beyond a wedding invite. It was about how my family had treated my wife. I needed to know if Jack was willing to acknowledge the wrong that had been done, or if he was going to continue to side with Lily, no matter what. I texted Jack that night. I didn't waste time with small talk. I went straight to the point. Jack, I need to understand why you've chosen to side with Lily over me and Emily. I need to know why you're okay with excluding her from the wedding and why you haven't stood up for her. I sat there for a long time, staring at the phone screen. No response. It felt like an eternity. I could feel my frustration building. How had things gotten so bad? Was this really the brother I had grown up with? The one who had always had my back? The next day, Jack finally replied. He wanted to meet up. I agreed, not knowing what I was walking into. I wasn't sure if I was prepared to hear what he had to say, but I had to. I needed to know if there was any hope left for us. When we met, it was clear right away that Jack was uncomfortable. He avoided eye contact, his body tense. There was no warm greeting, no, "Hey man, good to see you." It was all business. "Jack, I just want to know," I said, not wasting any time. "Why? Why are you doing this?" Jack shifted in his seat. "I don't know, man. Lily's been upset. And my parents, they didn't exactly help, but you know how she is. She's just trying to make everything perfect. I have to support her." I stared at him, trying to wrap my mind around his words. "So, you're willing to throw me and Emily under the bus for her, just to keep the peace?" Jack looked down at his hands. "It's not like that. It's just, she's my fiancé, and this is her day. I didn't think it would blow up like this." I shook my head. "You didn't think this through. You didn't think about how it would affect me or Emily. You didn't even consider what you were doing." There was a long silence. Jack didn't look up. "I messed up," he said quietly. "But I didn't know it would turn out like this. I'm sorry, man. I really am." His apology didn't make things better. It didn't erase the hurt. I had hoped for more. I had hoped for a real understanding of what had happened. But all I got was regret, and it didn't feel enough. I couldn't fix this. I couldn't undo the damage. But what I could do was stand by Emily, the woman who had always had my back, the woman who had never made me choose between her and anyone else. I wasn't about to let my family tear us apart. I left that meeting with Jack feeling empty. It was as if I'd been walking into the dark, only to find that I couldn't even see my feet anymore. The apology wasn't enough, and Jack's justification for siding with Lily, it wasn't just wrong, it was almost insulting. He'd let his fiancée dictate this whole situation, and now, all of a sudden, he was feeling bad about it? It was too late for that. The damage was done, and I couldn't just pretend it hadn't affected me, or worse, that it hadn't hurt Emily. That night, I went home to Emily, and when I walked through the door, she was sitting on the couch, waiting for me. I could tell she'd been stewing over everything, just like I had. There was a certain heaviness in the air, like we were both waiting for something, an answer maybe, or some kind of resolution. But nothing had come yet. Not from my family, not from Jack. "So, what happened?" she asked, her voice soft but searching. She wasn't angry, not in the way I'd expected. It was like she was bracing herself, trying to prepare for whatever I was about to say. I sat down beside her, and I took a deep breath. I couldn't hide how much the conversation had shaken me. "He apologized," I said. "Jack apologized, but it didn't feel right. It felt like he was just giving me the bare minimum, like he was saying what he thought would make things go away. He's still letting Lily have her way. It's all about her perfect day, and I can't get behind that." I looked at her then, and I could see how much it hurt her. She didn't need to say anything. Her eyes said it all. She had given so much to my family. She had tried. She had done everything in her power to be a part of it, to make them feel like she belonged. And now, all of that, everything she had invested, was being rejected. Her worth was being questioned, and I hated it. I hated that this was happening to her. I hated that my family had made her feel like she wasn't good enough. "I don't know how to fix this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm so tired of this, of them making you feel like this. She took my hand in hers, her grip tight but comforting. "You don't have to fix it, Andrew," she said softly. "You've already done everything you can. You've chosen me. You've stood by me. That's what matters. The rest it's not on us anymore." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. "I don't know if I can go to the wedding anymore, Emily. I can't just show up and pretend everything is fine when I know how they've treated you." She nodded. "I don't want you to go if it's going to cause more pain. I don't want you to be caught in the middle, especially when it's my place in their lives that's being questioned." It hit me then, like a hammer to my chest. It wasn't just a wedding. It was a test of loyalty, a test of who mattered more, the person I had chosen to share my life with or the family I was supposed to have shared everything with. And the truth was, I couldn't make this decision on anyone else's terms but my own. I couldn't sacrifice Emily to make my family happy. It wasn't about peace anymore. It was about standing up for what was right. The following days were a blur. The fallout was swift and unrelenting. My parents tried to reach out, sending angry texts and voicemails and calling me to try and guilt me into reconsidering. They accused me of overreacting and of choosing Emily over the family, like that was somehow a betrayal. My dad even texted me saying, "You've been manipulated by her, son. Don't let this tear our family apart." The audacity, the entitlement, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I couldn't believe they were blaming Emily. But that's what they did. They didn't understand how they had made her feel, how they had disregarded her, how their actions had completely disregarded her worth as a member of the family. It wasn't just about the wedding anymore. It was about years of passive-aggressive behavior, of subtle jabs, of making her feel like she didn't belong. I couldn't ignore that. I stood my ground. I didn't budge. Every time they called, I picked up, only to end the conversation with the same words. "I'm not going to the wedding if Emily isn't invited, and you can't make me feel guilty about it." Eventually, even my extended family got involved. Word had spread like wildfire. I started getting messages from cousins, aunts, and uncles. Some of them were supportive, telling me they understood my decision, but many were angry. I heard from one cousin who told me, "You're blowing this way out of proportion. Just go to the wedding and stop making a scene." It hurt. It really hurt to hear these people who I thought understood the value of loyalty and respect, telling me that I was making a mistake. They couldn't see what I saw, what Emily and I had been through. They didn't understand the emotional toll of being treated like an outsider in my own family. I wasn't going to be a part of it anymore, not without real change. I told Emily about the messages, and she listened patiently. She didn't say much, but I could see the sadness in her eyes. It wasn't about the wedding anymore. It was about the fact that she had been treated so poorly by the people I had grown up with, and that broke my heart. I couldn't stand it. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how deep this wound ran. It wasn't just about exclusion. It was about disrespect. It was about my family's refusal to see her for the incredible person she was, the person I had chosen, and I knew, right then, that we couldn't keep playing by their rules anymore. The days leading up to the wedding were filled with tension, but Emily and I made a decision. We were going to stick together. I wasn't going to back down. I wasn't going to apologize for choosing her. We were a team, and we were stronger than this. The wedding came and went without us, and my family didn't reach out after that. They were too proud, too caught up in their own version of what was right, but I didn't regret my decision. It hurt. It hurt a lot, but Emily and I came out of it stronger. We had each other, and that was all we needed. The aftermath of the wedding was quieter than I expected, but the silence was deafening. My family had made their stance clear, and I had made mine. There was no going back from this. Emily and I had been through so much together over the past few weeks, and it was clear to both of us that there was no place for us in that environment anymore. It wasn't just about the wedding. It was about the years of hurt, the years of feeling like we didn't belong, like Emily didn't belong. And now, my family has pushed us to a point of no return. I didn't hear from Jack after the wedding, but the messages from my parents kept coming. The guilt-tripping, the accusatory texts, the voicemails, each one more desperate than the last. They kept saying I was tearing the family apart, that this was just one day, that I was overreacting. But it wasn't just one day, was it? It was about how they had made Emily feel, about how they had constantly treated her as less than. That wasn't something I could just ignore for the sake of peace. I couldn't live with that kind of disregard anymore. The days dragged on, and the tension between Emily and me was palpable. It wasn't the tension from our disagreement, it was the weight of what had happened. Emily had been hurt in a way I couldn't protect her from, and now I was the one who felt like I had failed. I kept asking myself if I had done enough, if I should have handled things differently. But Emily was my anchor, and I knew she wasn't blaming me. She just wanted the hurt to stop. One evening, after a particularly difficult day, my mom called. The first few rings felt like a lifetime, and when I finally answered, I knew what was coming. I could hear it in her voice, cold, sharp, and filled with judgment. "Are you happy with yourself?" she asked without preamble. "You ruined Alex's wedding." I wasn't surprised. I had known this conversation was coming, but I wasn't prepared for how it felt. The sting of her words, the way she was blaming me for making a stand. She didn't care about how much Emily had been hurt. She didn't care about the long-standing tension, the constant jabs, the exclusion that had been so carefully cultivated over the years. All she cared about was the family appearance, the peace. "I didn't ruin anything," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "You and Alex did that when you chose to treat Emily like she wasn't worth the effort." I could hear her exhale, like she was bracing for a fight. But I wasn't going to back down, not anymore. "We were just trying to avoid drama," she said, the words as empty as they were tired. "It's just one day. Can't you see that?" I shook my head, even though she couldn't see it. "No, it's not just one day. It's years of disrespect. It's years of making Emily feel like she wasn't good enough for this family, and I won't let that slide anymore." There was silence on the other end, and for a moment I thought maybe she was starting to understand. But when she spoke again, it was like she hadn't heard a word I said. "Your wife is the one who's been causing problems, Andrew. If you just stopped playing into her games, maybe everything would go back to normal." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It wasn't just about the wedding. It was about everything. Emily was the problem? My wife, the person who had always tried to fit in, who had always been nothing but respectful, was the one causing problems? "Enough, Mom," I said, my voice low and steady, but filled with resolve. "I've heard enough." I ended the call before she could say anything more. And that was it, the final straw. My mom, the woman who had raised me, who I had always looked up to, had just proven to me how little she cared about Emily, about us. I wasn't going to subject Emily to this any longer. I told Emily everything. She listened in silence, her face unreadable. I could see how much it had hurt her, but she didn't show it. Instead, she just looked at me with quiet determination. "I don't want to go back," she said softly. "I don't want to be part of that anymore. It's not worth it. We've been hurt enough." And in that moment, I knew she was right. It wasn't worth it. I wasn't going to put her through the same toxic cycle again. I wasn't going to go back to a family that couldn't even treat her with the respect she deserved. We made a decision that night. We were going no contact, no more pretending. No more trying to please people who had never really cared about us. We were going to focus on our marriage, our lives, and build something healthy, something that was truly ours. No more family drama. It was the hardest decision I'd ever made, but it was also the most freeing. I could feel the weight lifting off my shoulders, the burden of trying to keep everyone happy slowly dissipating. Emily and I had each other, and that was all we needed. The next few weeks were quiet. No phone calls, no texts from anyone in my family. It was exactly what we needed. It gave us space to breathe, to heal, and to find our footing again. And it made me realize that sometimes cutting ties with toxic people isn't just necessary, it's the healthiest choice you can make. It's been a few months since Emily and I cut ties with my family, and the silence has been deafening. But it's also been strangely peaceful. At first, I wasn't sure if we'd made the right choice, but now I know we did. The weight of all the drama, the guilt, and the tension we'd been carrying for so long is gone. Emily and I are finally able to focus on ourselves and our marriage without the constant strain of trying to please a family that never truly accepted her. I still love my family, but I've come to realize that love doesn't mean letting people walk all over you. It doesn't mean ignoring the hurt they cause just for the sake of keeping things normal. And that's what my family had been doing. Treating Emily like she wasn't part of the family, making her feel like an outsider. They'd done it for so long that I was blind to it until the wedding fiasco. Now that I see it clearly, I can't unsee it. A few weeks ago, My mom called. I didn't want to answer at first. I was so tired of the drama and the hurt, but I also knew I had to hear her out. Her voice was different this time, gentler, almost apologetic. Andrew, I think we need to talk, she said. I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I agreed to talk. She apologized. She admitted that she had failed us, that she had let things go too far, and that she had hurt both me and Emily. It wasn't the apology I had hoped for, but it was a start. She said she wanted to make things right. I told her that words weren't enough, that if she wanted to fix things, she needed to show that she understood why Emily had been hurt. It wasn't just about her apologizing to me. It was about showing respect to Emily, treating her like a part of the family. My mom agreed to reach out to Emily and apologize. I was skeptical, but I was willing to see if she followed through. A few days later, my mom sent a brief text to Emily. It was a half-hearted apology, impersonal, without real acknowledgement of the pain we had been through. Emily wasn't sure what to make of it. We both agreed that it was a start, but it didn't fix the years of hurt. We needed more than words. We needed actions. As for Jack, I haven't heard from him since the wedding. I know he's still wrapped up in trying to please Lily, and I can't keep pretending that everything is fine between us. He apologized, but it didn't feel genuine. It felt like he was just saying what he thought I wanted to hear. I don't know if our relationship can ever be the same, but Emily and I, we're stronger than ever. This whole experience has brought us closer. We've learned that family is not just about blood, it's about respect, trust, and support. Emily is my family now, and I will protect her no matter what. We've decided to keep our distance from my family for now. We're focusing on building our life together, without the toxic influence of people who don't respect us. If my family wants to be a part of our lives, they'll have to prove it. But for now, we're content to move forward without them. The love and support we found in each other is enough.